Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tell Your Story, my video series inspired by my book, Stories from Web, and an opportunity for me to find people that I have heard bits or pieces of their story and have been inspired by it and want to bring them on here and introduce them to you so that they can share some of their story with you and maybe inspire you as well. I'm thrilled this week to have my special guest, Staci Erickson. Staci, thanks for being here. Why don't you tell everybody who you are?
Yeah, my name is Staci Erickson. I live in a little town called Perryton, Texas, and I'm a teacher, and my husband's also a teacher. And I just have that's pretty much it. I have two little boys. They're wonderful, and so this is my 14th year in education, and so I like long walks on the beach. No, I'm just kidding. But
There you go. There you go. Well, Staci, you and I, we connected online. We've connected face to face in real life.
Yes.
And I've followed some of your experiences and your journey, and you've got a lot of neat things going on. But one thing that happened recently that really stuck out to me was all revolves around a kidney.
Yes.
So kind of tell our viewers a little bit about that and kind of what happened there.
Yeah, it was crazy. So it was June 21st, 2017, and that's actually me and my husband's anniversary.
Oh.
And it's really sweet, but it was funny how the story came about. Like, me and him got in a little argument. It was really stupid. I don't even remember what it was about. And so I was up in my room and just like the good wife, pouting. And so I was scrolling through Instagram, just trying to like get over it. And it was, like I said, it was really stupid. I don't remember what it was. But so I'm mad about something, and I'm scrolling through Instagram, and I come across a story from Ron Clark, and it's I forget exactly what it said, but it basically said, here's one of the greatest fathers in the world, and he needs your help. He needs a kidney. And it was a picture of Carlos and his wife and his two kids, and it had the number of two transplant centers in Georgia. And immediately whatever I was angry about, I completely forgot about, and I just immediately felt for this family. And I'm like, kind of felt bad because here I am, upset about something stupid, and they have real problems going on. And so, I said a little prayer for them, and it touched my heart, but I kept going on with my life. And I actually had gone the next couple of days, I had gone to Get Your Teach On in San Antonio. Mm-hmm. And the entire time I was gone to Get Your Teach On, I could not stop thinking about this family. And I had finally decided that when I got back home from the trip that I was going to call the transplant center and just ask for information. I hadn't made any decisions. I was just going to call a transplant center and kind of see, what was this about? And so I get home, and I go outside and I make the phone call. Like, my husband doesn't know anything about this. My husband's an amazing man. He with a lot. God knew what he was doing when he put us together. But anyway, so I called this transplant center, and it's actually in Alabama, which is only like, I think, an hour and a half, 2 hours from Atlanta, where this family lived. And so I call him, and I speak to Jill, the kidney coordinator, and she, I just ask every single question you can possibly think of. And one thing that I learned was there was about 100,000 people on the transplant list, and about only half of those people actually make it to transplant. They don't get a kidney in time.
Right.
And so she also talked about living donors, how the chances of someone, the success rate is higher with living donors. And so by the end of it, I said, okay, sign me up. We're going to get him a kidney. Whether I'm a direct match or we go through a kidney chain, we're going to do this. And so
now at this point, had you had any kind of contact with him at all?
No, I hadn't.
So this was just you hearing about a story about somebody in need and feeling like, maybe I can do something, and then just making the call and kind of getting some information to hear about, like, what is this actually going to entail? What am I going to have to do? When you made that call, like, what kind of stuff did they tell you? Like, did it freak you out at all?
No, not at all. My personality is very impulsive, but well, people perceive it as impulsive.
Mhm.
I'm actually thinking of all the different things in my head, probably at a faster speed than most. And so I'm processing everything she's saying. And I'm while she's talking to me about everything that goes along with donating, I'm thinking of all the risk at the same time and thinking,
Right.
am I going to take that risk? Is this something that I'm willing to do? But really, when they go through such an extensive testing process, they take blood work, they do an EKG, they check your heart, they check your kidney, they check all these different things that if like one thing's wrong, just one thing is slightly wrong, you're out. And so I felt good about that they were going to make sure I was actually healthy enough to donate.
And did you have to go to Alabama for all the tests, or could those be done anywhere?
I went to Alabama, and so I got a plane ticket, and that was the end of June. I was able to get in August 7th is when I actually flew to Alabama, because it just took that much time for them to get everything
Right.
coordinated and for me to get down there. So I flew down there, and they did all my testing and most of my testing in one day.
And so you make this decision that this is something you want to pursue. You go down, you get the testing done. When do you make that connection with him or the family? And when do you know that you're actually even a match?
So after I get off the phone, I first tell my husband. He comes outside and he said, "Hey, who were you talking to?" I said, "Well, funny story. I'm going to give my kidney away to someone." And I asked him, "Are you okay with that?" Which was really just a courtesy question. And because I had already made up my mind. I'm definitely a believer that God puts us in places in our lives and you listen to it and you act. And um, anyways, and my husband knows that about me. And so he's just like, "Okay, tell me more." So, by the end of the conversation, he said, "Okay, let's do this." Well, so anyways, I go to Alabama and sorry, I kind of went off a little bit. What was your question again?
So you go to Alabama,
Yes, yes.
and then do you find out
Oh,
that you're a match before you make the contact, or how does that work?
okay, yeah, that's what it was. No, what happened is I told them before I went to Alabama because I asked the coordinator. I was like, how do you do this? And I asked the same question. I said, should I get all the testing done first or should I tell them first? And
Right.
she encouraged me to tell them first
Mhm.
because she said it gives families hope.
Right.
And because a lot of times that's what a lot of the families need is hope that the process is moving forward and that this can actually happen. And so I contacted them before I actually went to Alabama, and I felt a little weird because I was like, "There's this crazy girl from Texas saying I want to give you my kidney," and I wasn't sure how they were going to respond, but they were wonderful, and they were extremely supportive and grateful. And so when we get to Alabama, we do all the testing. It was probably about a month later because there's one test that they have to do where they see if I have any antibodies that are going to react to him or if he has
Right.
antibodies. So it's a test that takes like 3 weeks. And then once that test is complete, then they have to take it to committee.
Okay.
So it's about a month later that we get the phone call that I was a match and that I was approved to do the testing or to donate.
And at this point, you'd still never met face to face, right?
No, we had it. And it was funny because I believe it was September 6th that we found out that we were a go. And September 8th, I was heading to Michigan and I had a 3 or 4 hour layover. And so they came and picked me up and we met for the very first time in an airport because my layover was in Atlanta, Georgia. Tell me God doesn't work. I mean, he knows what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was the very first time we met was I believe it was September 8th.
And what was that like? What was it, one of those awkward things? Like, how is this going to be in real life? Or was it like, oh my gosh, we've been friends forever? Like, what was that experience like for you?
It was really cool. It was one of those things like it wasn't awkward at all. It was kind of like what you just said, like it's like we've known each other forever. And the Copelands are so sweet, and they're just like we immediately connected, and I wish we lived in Atlanta or they lived in Texas. I wish we could see each other more often. But I mean, it was just natural, and it was like we had known each other for years, and so it was a really cool experience.
I can just imagine a family knowing that, there is an organ that they need, and that they're on this list where only 50% of the people can get that. And then to receive that phone call from you, I'm sure from their perspective, must have been one of those overwhelming moments emotionally, just to know that because their story was amplified by somebody they knew, you caught glimpse of it and felt so moved to donate. And so, you meet them, you find out. When do you find out you're a match, and how does all that move forward?
Yeah, that was right before we met them. So it was September 6th we got the call and that we were a match, and that they had also approved us by committee, because the committee has to look at all your documents, and you can go through all this testing and then it gets to committee and they can knock it out.
Got
And
it.
so that was the biggest thing. So once they found out we were a match, they took it to committee and they said, "Yeah, let's do this." They could, she's healthy enough to do it. We were actually a perfect match.
Mhm.
I had extremely healthy kidneys that I didn't even realize I had, and so they were very, very healthy kidneys. And so um,
So
after
that's in September, right?
yes, so it was September 28th is when the surgery happened, because we both
Oh,
told
that's
it.
fast.
Yeah.
So from making the decision in June to getting an appointment in August to seeing your match in September to the surgery at the end of September.
Yeah, because
Wow.
they told me it was up to me to decide when we could do surgery, and
Mhm.
I wanted to do it as soon as possible,
Right.
because dialysis is very, very hard on the body, and it's very hard on the family. And um, my thought was, why wait?
Right.
Why make him go through another month of dialysis? Let's get, or 2 months or 3 months. Let's do this as quickly as possible, because I was ready to do it, and I know he was ready to do it, and so that's why I decided, let's do this as quickly as we possibly can. So,
So you decide to do the surgery, and you fly up to Alabama for the surgery, right?
um, yes,
And
Birmingham.
so did the family also have to go have the surgery at Alabama, or how did that work?
Yes. So what had happened was,
'Cause I thought from when I saw the photos online from when this happened, I thought y'all were both in hospital gowns at this on the same day.
yes, yeah. So we were. What happens is we both got there the day before. They
Mhm.
checked us in, did the last minute blood work and everything, and the next morning they did surgery. Well, we both were in the waiting room, where it was a pre-op room together,
Right.
so we were side by side, and they took me in first. They did the surgery, and then when I was about done, they rolled him in, and our operating rooms were side by side. So
Okay.
they literally took the kidney, walked it over there, and put it in him. I mean, there was a little bit more to it than that, but I
Yeah.
mean, they just transported it straight across. So
So, at any point during this process, did you have that fear or that second guessing or that, oh my gosh, something could happen?
I didn't. I did have, right before surgery, I thought to myself, I said, I was thinking, I said, if something were to happen, and let's say something goes wrong in surgery and
Mhm.
I don't wake up from surgery, am I going to be okay with that? And I was 100% absolutely fine with it.
Right.
I do have two little boys and I have a husband, but I was so confident and sure of this decision, and I was
Right.
so confident and sure that this was um, totally from God, that number one, I was confident that it was going to be fine. But
Mhm.
number two, if this is, I mean, if something went wrong, something went wrong.
Right.
But I was just so confident in that decision that I really didn't second guess it at all. And I
Right.
just knew whatever happened, I was going to be okay with. It was
Right.
a peace that's really unexplainable. It was just something that, like I said, it's just so hard to explain that feeling of knowing that this was supposed to happen.
Right.
And the same thing went, because that's one thing they asked us during all the testing was, what if the kidney fails?
Mhm.
What if he gets the kidney and it fails? Are you going to be okay with that? And I was completely okay, because I was like, well, at least we gave it a shot.
Right.
But
So how long after the surgery until you know for sure that the kidney was a success?
The kidney started working immediately
Okay.
before they even closed them up. It started working immediately. Now there's risk of infection, and so Carlos had to do. It was on a lot of different medicines and had to, go in every single day for blood work to make sure the kidney was functioning. And so they had to go. They had to stay in Alabama maybe a month, or it was a long time, 3 to 4 weeks. They had to stay in Alabama, and every single day they would go in and test: was a kidney working? Was it functioning properly? Did he have an infection? Was there any kind of rejection? And nothing. I mean, it went as smoothly as you could possibly ask for.
So this was all a little over a year ago now. What has happened in the meantime? Have you kept in contact? And then at the same time, have you felt any different since not having a kidney or an extra kidney?
I'm a little lopsided. No, I'm just kidding. No, I honestly I feel great. It was one of those things, like, I have a little bit of scar tissue you can kind of feel that makes it feel like there's like kidney pain there, but there's no kidney. It's
Right.
like almost like a phantom pain,
Uh-huh.
but it doesn't actually hurt. But it's just kind of I don't know, kind of just like some kind of phantom feeling.
Right.
But that's really the only thing. Everything else is going well. My kidney function is really good. They test me every 6 months for the first 2 years to make sure everything's going smoothly, and my kidney function's fine, and everything's gone really well.
And what about keeping in contact with Carlos and the family?
Oh yeah, we keep in contact with each other all the time. We're texting each other. Like I said, I wish we lived closer so we could see each other more. I've been harassing them about finding time during the holidays to get together. But yeah, we talk to each other all the time.
That's amazing. So, I'm sure that, like I said, this family just felt such this huge godsend of you coming to them. Was there anything in particular that they expressed to you that just hit you right in the heart that you're like, this is why I'm doing this. I'm going to hold on to this comment or this moment forever?
Yeah. So, November after our surgery, we got to go to Ron Clark Academy for their 10-year extravaganza. It was like their 10-year reunion.
Right.
And Ron Clark had a video made with the Copelands. And they played it during the extravaganza, and then we went on stage and everything. And one thing that Tanisha, this is Carlos's husband, said was that they saw, I'm going to start crying. They saw their dad slipping away in that, that they didn't know how much longer. And so they could see him slipping away. And hearing Jacoby, their son, talk about Carlos and how he had to think about possibly not having his dad in the future, really hit home, because now they have their dad and he's doing wonderful, and he's responding wonderfully to the kidney, and so those fears that they have can be put to rest because he's doing so well with it. And so that right there just really hit me hard.
Yeah. Well, there's so many people in need, whether it's a particular blood type, whether it's something like a kidney or anything like that. If there are people listening or watching who may be interested in getting more information on ways that they can help other families like you did, where would you suggest is the first place they go?
There's definitely, you can go to the National Kidney Foundation website. I think it's nationalkidneyfoundation.com, I think. And they will talk about all the different things for living donors in the process. As far as if, let's say, they want to be an altruistic, how do you say that word? Altruistic? No.
Altruistic?
Yes, I'm awful. But that kind of donor, you can actually contact the transplant centers, any transplant centers, because a lot of those centers have what are called kidney chains. And people will say, I'm willing to donate my kidney to someone in need, and they might not have anyone in mind. They're just willing to do it. And so they'll match them up, and they'll create this chain to where one kidney can actually save 3 different lives, because basically what happens, they said, okay, I'll donate my kidney, but you've got to find this person a kidney for, I might not even be describing this correctly, but anyways.
It's so funny you mentioned this because this is so dumb, but I watched this TV show called New Amsterdam,
Uh-huh.
and on that show, like 2 weeks ago, the
Mm-hmm.
episode was a whole organ transplant chain
Mm-hmm.
where this family was donating an organ for another family so that they would donate it for another, so that they would
Yes.
donate for another, so that they would donate back to the original family because
Mm-hmm.
that's the only way they all matched because
Yes.
none of them matched with somebody from their own personal family.
Yep, that's a kidney chain. And that's one thing I was actually willing to do if like I wasn't a match for Carlos. It's basically saying, okay, I got my kidney. If I'll give you mine, if you give me yours. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
that's
happens a
amazing.
lot. Like my blood type's O negative, so I can donate to anyone. But there's some people who are willing to donate for a family member, but maybe their blood types don't match, or maybe there's
Right.
antibodies, and so that chain allows more people to get kidneys.
I love that. And
Yeah.
and totally switching gears on you here.
Yeah.
You also have a pretty unique path in education as well. You taught for a while, then you were an assistant principal, and then you made that decision to go back in the classroom. Talk
Yeah.
to me a little about that.
Yeah. So I taught for 10 years. I taught fifth grade math mostly. I did a year in fourth grade math, and then I did some elementary instructional coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And then we decided to move because my husband decided after 10 years of me telling him he needed to be a teacher, he finally decided he was going to be a teacher. And so we moved to his hometown, which is how we ended up in Perryton, so that he could teach. And so when we moved here, I had the opportunity to become an assistant principal. I was already working on my degree, and so I was like 9 hours in, and they hired me on a probationary. And so I was an assistant principal for 3 years. But at the end of 3 years, I had asked myself, is this, do I want to be a principal? Because I've been doing the assistant principal for 3 years. And I made that decision. I don't really want to be a principal because that's a lot. I mean, kudos to you. That's a lot of pressure. And I decided I wanted to be more on the curriculum side. And so I went back into the classroom to teach middle school math, which I love middle school. They're awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm doing instructional coaching for middle school too. So I'm kind of getting more onto the curriculum path. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And you have some really powerful stories too about your journey with really understanding forgiveness as well and what
Yeah.
that means and how to work through that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So kind of a little backstory. I have been always a very driven person,
Mhm.
and I have always sought perfection. And if I wasn't perfect at something, by golly, I was going to do everything in my power to become perfect. Like I had to be the best. And it worked well for me for a very long time. I was a successful teacher. I was one of the top assistant principals in the state in 2017. I was Texas Region
Yep.
16 AP
Yep.
of the Year. I was getting awards for my professional development in our region. So my quest for perfection and to prove to everyone how great I could be. My husband, love my husband. He has this crazy ability to see people for who they are, and
Mhm.
he should have been a therapist too. Like he should have been a teacher and therapist, and I mean, he just has. He saw right through me, and one day he sat me down and said, "Staci, your need to not be rejected is big. You have this fear of rejection." And he said, "You need to forgive your father." And I'm like, "What? We just got finished eating tacos, and now you're talking to me about forgiving my father? What are you talking about?" Like, and I'll tell you about my father in a minute. And I said, "No, I don't have this need for rejection. I mean, this fear of rejection or this need for approval. I had this mindset, if you're going to do something, you're going to be your best at it." And he saw right through me. And so for several years, he would keep telling me this, and I wouldn't listen to him. I'm like, "No, you're crazy. This is nuts. I don't have this fear of rejection." And I wouldn't listen to him because things were going really, really well for me. well, kind of a backstory with my dad. I never knew my dad. He, um, there was a lot of things that had happened before I was born. I had two sisters before me. I'm actually a twin, and so before me and my twin sister were born, I had two other sisters, and one of those sisters got in a really, really bad accident. And because of that, she was a healthy child, but because of the really bad accident, she became severely disabled.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had my other sister. Well, before I was born, my dad had convinced my mom to have another child because my oldest sister, who was in an accident, couldn't really interact because of her disability. So he wanted someone for my younger sister. Okay, makes sense. But he had a little hidden agenda. He had decided he wanted boys. And so when me and my twin sister were born, this is back in 83, I'm 35, and he was in the military and they didn't really do ultrasounds for gender. So when we and my twin sister were born and we were not boys, he checked out.
Wow.
He had decided that, and I did not find out about this. I'm kind of getting a little ahead of myself. I did not find out about why he left until last year. Um, and so keep all that in mind.
Yeah.
So we'll hold on to that little piece, and so I'll get back to that in a second. So, anyways, so I ignored my husband. I was like, "You're crazy. I don't need to forgive him. He was never around. Why do I need to? How do you forgive someone who was never sorry? That you never had any kind of relationship with? Like, I was really confused on how you forgive someone like that.
Right.
And so, well, then I went through a really, really hard period of my life where nothing was going right, and I felt like everywhere I turned, there was always something coming at me. I lost two people to me to some really bad tragedies during that time. There was things in my own personal life that it didn't matter what I did or how I did it. It was never good enough. And so all the success that I had experienced from hard work all of a sudden was gone. And it didn't matter how hard I worked to be better and how hard I worked to prove myself. It didn't matter. Well, so I was at my lowest point, and then I find out about my dad, because my mom had never told me about the reason why my dad left as a child, which understandably so. She was trying to protect us.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, I was at my very lowest point, and I was sitting in the living room, and I looked at my husband. And I was like, I think you're right. I think I need to forgive him. And I said, because I have finally recognized my fear of rejection was true and it was strong. And it had gotten to the point so much that I was craving this acceptance from other people that I was like needy, and I felt needy and I felt pathetic, and all these things I didn't like. I was those are these feelings I had, and like when I looked in the mirror, I didn't even recognize the confident person, and I was just at my lowest point. And so I finally recognized I do have this fear of rejection. My husband has been right all these years, and so I knew I had to forgive my dad, because I knew the only way to get past this fear of rejection was to take all this stuff that I had been carrying around for 35 years and to lay it down, lay it at God's feet and not pick it back up. But I didn't know how to do that. So I had gotten myself so worn down and sick that I stayed home, and I was sitting on the couch, and I started researching on where my dad was buried, because he had actually died when I was 15. We found that out. Like, we didn't know where he was, but then when I was 15, he had died. And so anyway, so I was researching where he was buried, found him, and this might sound crazy to some, but my husband got home that day, and I said, I'm driving to where he's buried. I'm going to let it all out. And I don't know how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to forgive him. I have no clue how this is going to work, but I'm going to do this, and I'm getting my life back. And so I drove 6 hours. I got up at 5 in the morning, and it's in this little town, teeny tiny town called Hannah, Oklahoma. Drove 6 hours there. I got there, and the entire 6 hours there, I'm just praying. I'm like, God, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to forgive someone that doesn't care, that never cared. And but I was like, I have to do this. I have to get my life back, because it was affecting my 2 little boys. It was affecting my marriage. It was affecting my relationships. It was affecting everything.
Right.
So this is where it gets good. So I get to the cemetery, and it's this little bitty town. I get to the cemetery, and I'm thinking, okay, I can find him. It's small. I can find him quick. 10 minutes go by, can't find him. 20 minutes go by, can't find him. All this anger, for 45 minutes, I'm looking for him. All this anger I had been suppressing for 35 years. All this anger I had been suppressing, I just was letting it all out. And I finally find him, and he has a stone, and all it says was his name, and it said finally home. And I was angry about that. And I was like, how dare someone have any kind of kindness towards him or anything nice, because he left us. So I'm sitting there, and thank goodness it was in a little teeny tiny town, because I'm about to sound crazy, but I let him have it. And this sounds crazy because, there's no one there. I'm yelling at a stone. And so I just let him have it. And I'm just yelling at him, and all these things that these emotions I didn't even know I had just came out. And so I'm talking to him about it, not talking to him, yelling at him and everything. And I just remember dropping to my knees and just crying. And I'm just begging God to find a way to forgive him. And I'm getting deep here. Anyway, so I'm just begging God. I don't know how to forgive. I don't know how to forgive. So I start playing this song. Are you familiar with Hillsong?
Mm-hmm.
They have a song called "Who You Say I Am."
Uh-huh.
And one verse of the song says, "In my Father's house." I don't like crying, by the way. It says, "In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am." And immediately I felt this release, because he may never have had a place for me in his house, but our God does.
Right.
And so I'm still crying, and then all of a sudden it hits. My dad, who I didn't know, from what I understand, suffers from some mental illness, and that's the reason why he did the things he did. And he never got the help that he needed for it. And that just clicked with me. He too also has a place in our Father's house. He too also is a child of God. And he may never have made right what he did to me, but he is still someone that deserves grace, right, even as much as it hurt. And at that moment, I forgave him. And at that moment, 35 years of insecurities, of the feeling of rejection, of pain, gone. Mm-hmm. Completely gone. And to describe the weight that was lifted off my shoulders, I don't know if there really is a way to describe it, but it was just one of those things that I think a lot of times it's real easy to say we forgive someone, and it's real easy to say, yeah, I forgive him, it's okay. Or sometimes we hold on to that hurt if we choose not to forgive someone. So we're holding on to that hurt, whether we're realizing we're holding on to it or not. Sometimes that forgiveness is not always about just for that person. It's about for us too. And right. So just being able to release and forgive someone. And I know, and I wanted to share this part with everyone because it's something very personal to me. And but I wanted to share with it because there's a lot of us that are walking around with this pain and this hurt that we refuse to let go, or sometimes we don't even know how to let go. Like we want to let go of it, but we don't know how. And just praying and just releasing it and laying it down at Jesus' feet and not picking it back up, that's how we truly can forgive others. And so anyway, so that's that.
I mean, between the donating the kidney and the story of your father and your journey through that forgiveness and being able to release that, I mean, there's so much to take from this conversation tonight, just about that selflessness, but also that ability to still be vulnerable within the pain. Because I mean, even after you forgive and let go, those memories are still there, but you're not the same. And
Right.
you're able to make decisions differently and move forward differently. So I thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
journey and that just that vulnerability, because for you, that was exactly how you needed to do it, to let that go.
Yeah.
And I love that, and I love the way that you were able to do it, and I'm happy for you that you were able to find that release and feel that weight lifted off of you.
Yeah.
So I want to tell you, thank you for coming on here and sharing those. But more
Yeah.
than that, I mean, the more that we talk about pieces of our story and the things that we go through, the more it lets others know that they're not alone. Uh,
Right.
and so I know that sharing some of that isn't always easy.
Yeah.
But Staci, I admire you and what you've done and what you continue to do, and I know that you're impacting so many. So I want to tell you thank you for coming on and being a guest on my show today.
And I appreciate it. And thank you for letting me come on. And I just appreciate being able to share it. The forgiveness one was what I was most nervous about. But right before I came on, I just prayed. I said, okay, God, give me what I need to say. But I just think that sometimes we just have to let go of those things that are weighing us down and fight through it and find ways to let go of that so that we can truly be who God has made us to be. So,
Right, right.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Staci.
Thank
And
you.
thank you, everybody, for listening or watching tonight for another episode of Tell Your Story. Hopefully, Staci was able to inspire you and give you some hope or even some ideas. And I hope that it helps you learn to be brave enough to share a piece of your story. So, hope everybody has a great night and join me next week with another awesome guest.